This video concerns criticisms of the Electoral College and the proposed alternatives. What I'll do is I'll describe how the three alternatives would work and then talk about issues with implementing those changes. On screen you can see the 2024 election result, courtesy of the BBC, and you can also see that the battleground states are shaded in grey and red: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania and the state of Georgia. You could also include North Carolina in that list. The 2024 presidential elections centred around those 7 so-called battleground states. And it became very clear early on in the campaign that both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump would have had to have won in a majority, and in Trump's case, all of the battleground states in order to achieve a clear victory. It's not the first time that the Electoral College has been criticised. 2016 led to lots of criticism because the winner of the popular vote ended up losing the election, and that was Hillary Clinton. And again in the year 2000, Al Gore won the popular vote but lost in the Electoral College when he lost in the state of Florida by fewer than 300 votes. And so the Electoral College is a system that most Americans are unhappy with. In fact, in a recent poll, 61% of Americans said that they wished to reform the Electoral College. The issue is that there is no agreed alternative to replace it with. We're going to talk about the first alternative, which is the direct election of the president, which would essentially mean that the winner of the popular vote nationwide would become the president. One of those instances where that didn't happen was the year 2016. Donald Trump won by 304 Electoral College votes to 227 for Hillary Clinton. But Clinton had won the popular vote by 2.9 million. The reason for that is Trump managed some razor-thin majorities in states like Wisconsin, Michigan and Pennsylvania, and Hillary Clinton had comfortable majorities in already so-called blue states like California and New York, which led to a situation where the losing candidate in the Electoral College actually won the popular vote. And so in the immediate aftermath of the 2016 presidential election, there were calls for reform to the Electoral College, particularly from those who had voted Democrat and felt as though the Electoral College favoured the Republicans. This situation also happened in the year 2000 when George W. Bush won the presidency by 271 Electoral College votes to 266, with Al Gore having over 500,000 more votes nationwide than the Republican candidate George W. Bush. So direct election would be quite simple. Instead of voting as a citizen in the state of Colorado or Mississippi, you would just vote as an American citizen on a nationwide scale, and the winner of the popular vote would become the president. But there are problems with that. The Founding Fathers intended for an electoral college to preserve the voice of smaller states, those with fewer people living in them, such as Wyoming, have 1 electoral college vote per 200,000 people. The state of Texas has 40 electoral college votes as of 2024, but actually, a voter in Wyoming, their political voice, is 4 times more influential than a voter in the state of Texas, because there are more electoral college votes per person in Wyoming than there are in the state of Texas. So that would be a problem with implementation. It would damage the political voice of the smaller states. Equally, this was the intention of the Founding Fathers. The Electoral College was a compromise in order to protect the identity of those states. And then finally, it flies in the face of federalism. The United States of America is built upon the concept that states sign up to be part of a greater, wider union at a federal level. And to directly elect the president on a national scale would take away that state identity. The second proposal is to expand the congressional district system nationwide. So the congressional district system is only employed in the states of Maine and Nebraska. And what those 2 states do, after changing their constitution, is award 2 electoral college votes to the winner statewide, and then 1 electoral college vote for each winner per congressional district. In the year 2020, we can see that both Maine and Nebraska did split their electoral college vote. So in Maine, 3 of the 4 votes went to the Democrat candidate Joe Biden and 1 to Donald Trump. In Nebraska, 4 of the 5 Electoral College votes went to the candidate Donald Trump, with 1 remaining vote going to Joe Biden. And so some people suggest the congressional district system as a way of improving the Electoral College without making a more extreme reform. Those who wish to preserve the federal project and the voice of states argue that a congressional district system would give us a clearer result and give us a better idea of the desires of the American people without scrapping the Electoral College altogether. So as I said, it's employed in Maine and Nebraska, but what would happen if it was employed nationwide? Well, let's work backwards from 2020. The result of the election in 2020 and 2016 would not have changed. Biden would still have won in 2020 and Trump would still have won in 2016, though both with reduced majorities. When we get to 2012 is when it gets interesting. 2012 is the last example of when a presidential election would have resulted differently had the congressional district system been used nationwide. And in 2012, Barack Obama would have lost the presidency to Mitt Romney if the congressional district system had been outlined nationwide. The issues with implementation are that this would require either 48 separate amendments to a state constitution, or more simply, an amendment to the US Constitution, which would require 2/3 of the House and the Senate, as well as 3/4 of state legislatures to be in agreement. And the issue with that is that the support for the congressional district system just isn't there. It's only employed in 2 of 50 states as it is. 48 states have chosen not to implement that system nationwide. And generally, it would not radically change the result. If we go back to 2016, the loser of the popular vote would still have won the presidency. Now, Trump would have had a smaller margin of victory in the Electoral College, but the loser of the popular vote would still have won the Electoral College. And that is not dealing with the main criticism that critics of the Electoral College have. And if you go back to the year 2000, the last time previously to 2016, when the losing candidate of the popular vote won the Electoral College, in the year 2000, George W. Bush's margin of victory actually would have been expanded. So we would have got a less proportionate result in 2000 than we actually did under the Electoral College. So actually, we mustn't assume that implementing the congressional district system would result in a more proportional outcome. It could, as it would have done in the year 2000, given us a less proportional outcome than the Electoral College gave us. The final proposal is to have a proportional system, whereby each state's Electoral College vote would be distributed proportionally depending on the result in that state. So what I have done is I've taken 2 so-called red and blue states and looked in 2024 how those Electoral College votes would have been distributed if they were proportionally given out. In the state of Texas, a so-called red state, we can see that with only 58% of the vote in the state of Texas, Donald Trump would have picked up just 22 Electoral College votes. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, would have picked up 18. In the state of California, supposedly blue state, the 54 Electoral College votes that went to the Democrat Party would have been reduced to 31, with 23 for the Republicans. So it works quite simply. If you get 60% of the vote in a state, you will receive 60% of their Electoral College votes. Now, that won't always be possible in small states like Wyoming, where there are just 3 Electoral College votes. Donald Trump received 72% of the vote, but we can't divide 3 Electoral College votes by 75%. So what do we do with that final vote? Trump won in almost all but one county in the state of Wyoming. And so it wouldn't be totally proportionate. You know, in this case, Trump would get all 3 Electoral College votes and Kamala Harris would have got nothing for the 26% of the vote she got in that state. So what's good about it? Well, it still maintains the Electoral College and it would still ensure that people voted at a statewide level, and it could give us a fairer result. It would also lead to a nationalised election campaign. No longer would candidates have to focus in 6 or 7 battleground states, because electoral college votes can be won right across the US, and election campaigns would be nationwide rather than based in certain battlegrounds. Now, that would come with a financial implication, because election campaigns would become far more expensive, because candidates have to spend money in 50 states rather than 6 or 7. And the other issue, the other problem with implementation, as well as the cost of it, is that this would make it more likely that third parties would pick up electoral college votes. And a reminder that if no candidate gets 270, then the election is decided by the House for the presidency and the Senate for the vice presidency. And so this could increase the likelihood of elections being decided in Congress rather than at the ballot box.